Warning, this show may be triggering for anybody experiencing gambling-related harm. Please watch cautiously. We speak from our experiences only. Please seek professional help for a gambling addiction.
Hi, I'm Christina, and this is the Bet Free Life. Wait, is that how we do it? Hey, welcome to the holiday episode of the Bet Free Life. I'm Christina, and I haven't placed a bet since March of 2021.
And I'm Brian, and I last placed a bet in July of 2014. And tonight we're going to do a step one meeting, and we brought some friends along to help us have that meeting for everybody watching to see what a meeting is like if you have no idea. This is not a GA sanctioned meeting. This is just a meeting of people who have a gambling addiction and want to talk about it. A support group. And our friends that we brought along today are Rita and Jeff and Tara and Steve and Kitty. Thank you all for being here. Let's start with Kitty. Kitty, would you tell everybody just a little bit about yourself?
Thanks, Brian Hatch. I'm Kitty Martz. I'm in Portland, Oregon, and I am in remission from gambling harm around about the last 9 years or so. I work in the field. I'm a gambling mentor, and just really glad to be here and celebrating the holidays with y'all. Thanks for asking me.
Thank you, Kitty. And Jeff, would you tell everybody about yourself?
Hello. Hey, Brian. Hey, Christina. Thanks for inviting me. I'm Jeff, and I do a few things. I work for a problem gambling council in the state of Delaware. And I also run a support group, much like you're going to see now, except it's not recorded or published. But it is all about recovery. And I occasionally do a podcast with some guy that whose name escapes me right now. And that's my story. Oh, and of course, I'm in recovery and haven't placed a bet since July of 2015.
Thank you, Jeff. Rita, welcome. How are you? Tell everybody a little bit about yourself and your gambling.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. My name is Rita. I am a compulsive gambler, gratefully in recovery. And my date of surrender is March 6, 2010. Right now, I am a recovery coach where I support others in their recovery journey. And I also teach other people facilitate in the learning of other people who want to become recovery coaches. And I'm, again, very glad to be here. Thank you for inviting me, Christina.
Thanks for being here, Rita. And Steve, how are you? Tell everybody about your gambling.
Hey, Brian. I'm Steve. My last date of bet was 5/2/21. I live in upstate New York. I do these lovely Zoom meetings that we do here with Jeff, Brian, and everyone else. I do some GA Zoom meetings. I also run a podcast on gambling recovery. And this has turned my life around. You know, these meetings are great for anyone who has a gambling problem, any addiction problem. So I'm just grateful to be a part of these groups.
Thank you, Steve. And last, but only last, because her computer broke down and she's on an iPhone, Tara, welcome back. You've been here before, as is Jeff. Thanks for doing this. Would you tell everybody about your gambling?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I'm Tara, compulsive gambler. Haven't placed a bet on anything but myself since July of 2016. I also am the host of the Ambitious Addicts podcast and, like Rita, a recovery coach. I'm really grateful to be here and glad we're doing this holiday episode. Thanks so much for having me.
Christina, would you like to start us off with step one? We admitted we were powerless over gambling and that our lives had become unmanageable.
Yes, I'm glad you read the step. I was just about to read the step. It took me a long time to come to terms with it. I had a 15-year gambling career. Most people probably know that now, by now. And the last few years of my gambling, which was destructive and just caused a lot of harm, I still wasn't ready to accept that I had a problem, that it was because I was so scared of it being taken away, even though it was affecting me so badly. I knew by accepting it or talking about it, it, it would change my life. And I was scared of that, as weird as that sounds. So once I finally admitted it, and I spoke to somebody, and I shared what I had been going through, what I was dealing with, what I was struggling with. That was the best feeling I've had in such a long time. It was probably one of the first true feelings I'd had in such a long time. That experience of being heard and seen for the first time in years is a feeling I'll never forget. And so that started my recovery and learning about this addiction, because I knew that it had caused problems in my life, but I didn't know that it was an addiction. If I know that seems naive, but it's true. I didn't know. And so once I started my journey of recovery and really learned about addiction and recovery, changed my life. So that's where I'm at.
Step one really resonates with me when I think about my past and my gambling. Like you, Christina, I didn't recognize that it was an addiction, even though my very best friend in the world told me I was an addict. I just wouldn't accept it. It's like I was just having fun, Sometimes it wasn't as much fun, but towards the end of my, if you want to call it a career, my gambling career, I was out of control. My life was a mess. And I was powerless, seriously powerless against gambling. I couldn't stop. I could not stop. And it finally got to the point where it scared me. And that's when I dialed the number for help and talked to people. By the way, I'm in the Tampa Bay area of Florida. So I talked to someone like Jeff on the Florida Council of Gambling. And they sent me to a addiction counselor. And from there, I went to my first GA meeting. Now, my last bet was not when I went to the meeting. My first meeting was March 6, 2010. So I used that as my date rather than my bet was in February sometime. But I'm just grateful that there was a place for me where I could be released from this trap that I was in. And I'm still I'm still powerless over gambling, but I don't let that stop me now. I don't gamble anymore because I am powerless. I couldn't do anything, be where I am today if I was still gambling. So that's where I am in all of this.
Yeah. So, like I said, my last date of bet was 5/2/21. And like you, Rita and Christina said, at first, for a long time, I didn't realize it was an addiction. As I've talked about in our meetings previously, I've had several addictions in the past. I've been addicted to heroin, cocaine, a lot of different things. So with gambling, I've been clean since 2009, July of 2009. So I had a long stretch of time where I have never drank or used drugs since then. But I started gambling I started gambling about 8 years later because I never took recovery seriously, I guess I could say. I went into Narcotics Anonymous back in that time, but it was one of these things where I thought it wasn't going to be how do I say it? I thought it was going to be something I could move past. I would go to my meetings for about a year and I felt like I had worked past it, but I never really took it seriously. I just thought, I stopped using drugs and I'm good. So but I still had those underlying feelings of not feeling good enough, not feeling like I was enough of a father and a husband, and not really liking or really loving who I was. I was always ashamed of a lot of the things I'd done in the past during my past drug addictions. So, my wife and I got married in 2012. We were together for 8 years, basically, by the time I started gambling, or 7 years. And I went through a period of time gambling, and she caught me once, and I stopped for about a year at that point. And then I started gambling again. And it took me a while before I realized it was a problem. I knew it was a problem, addiction, before she caught me the second time. But when I really fully surrendered was the day that she caught me. I mean, I wanted to stop for months before that. It was a problem. I was losing thousands of dollars. I knew it was just that the bottom was going to drop out at any time. It's one of these things where I thought I needed to fix this. I need to get past this, or I'm going to lose my family. I'm going to lose my children. I'm going to lose everything if I don't fix this myself. And obviously that would have never worked. Even if I had won some large jackpot, won all the money I thought I needed to fix everything and be seen as a big shot or whatever to my wife, or as someone who could provide the life that I thought was necessary to make me feel good about myself. It wouldn't have mattered. I still had these lies, these secrets. I still felt how I felt about myself. And even if I was able to stop gambling, it would have come back in another way in the future. So for me, I needed to fully surrender to the fact that I'm an all-around addict, I guess you could say. I'm a gambling addict. This has been what's caused the most destruction in my life. This is what's happened now. But I need to fully surrender that I have these compulsive behaviors. I'm an addict, but there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with being an addict. There's nothing wrong as, being a recovering addict. I was worried about my wife seeing me as an addict. I was worried about how my family, the people around me, would see me. So it took a while for me to really come to grips with the fact that this is who I was, but that's not all I am. I'm not just an addict. I'm not just a recovering compulsive gambler. Most of us are good people. We just have this addiction. And once you fully surrender and realize that, and come into these rooms and come into these programs and talk to these just everybody in our groups are so wonderful. We have this lovely chat group. We all support one another. It's just, when I fully surrendered is when I really began my road to recovery. So my last date of bet was 5/2/21. My wife caught me on that Monday, 5/3/21. And at first I thought life was over, but for me, that's when life really began.
Man, gambling career is such a fascinating way to think about it. I spent a lot of years gambling. I had an on again, off again relationship with gambling. And it would peak and valley in times when my life was not how I wanted it to be. I gambled more. And when life was going okay, or I was too busy, I gambled less. I, like you, Stevie, had, addictions of other sorts, but never to the point that they brought me into the rooms of recovery. So I think I'd never really dealt with the fact that I am an addict, and gambling is the thing that got me deep enough, hard enough, that I ended up crawling into the rooms of recovery. I was fortunate that I'd had other addicts and alcoholics in my life who were an example of what was possible in a life with recovery. Who modeled to me what recovery looked like. And so I knew that hope was there when I was ready to seek it out. I don't think I was ready to end my relationship with gambling until my last day, when I got to the point that I had become this version of a woman who I had earlier judged and said, I'm never going to be like her. She's got a problem. And on the date of my last bet, July 30th of 2016, I had become her. I had become the woman that I judged. I had lost my whole paycheck. I did not have any money for bills or groceries. And life in recovery is so much different. I can stand to be alone with myself now. And I've begun to learn how to accept that part of myself that kind of wants to run away, and talk her into sitting in her feelings, and working a program of recovery and getting together with people like this to just talk about what's going on in life. And life is so much better now. So I'm grateful to be in long-term recovery and living a bet-free life.
Hey, thanks, Tara. Good to see you. Yeah, that's funny. July of 2016, and I'm July of 2015, and Brian's July of 2014. So maybe it has something to do with the summer months. Anyway, yeah, the question of step one and the whole notion of being powerless. Very much like Christina, I didn't think about that kind of thing. I didn't think about if I had an addiction for all the years I was gambling. And I'm not going to say it's because I didn't know about it or I wasn't educated about it. It was more like I never thought about it. I never purposely thought about it. I was in complete denial. There was just one time I remember thinking, after something that obviously was absolutely insane that I was doing, I was thinking whether I should get checked out for a brain tumor, because I hear that people that have brain tumors sometimes act, in ways that are very unusual. They can be aggressive. They can, take on a whole different personality. And that's how I felt I was. But I never thought about it directly with gambling, only because I didn't let my mind go there, because I think I was scared if it went there, it might lead to me concluding I need to stop. And that was the last thing I was going to do. So I got caught, which triggered my recovery. I did not voluntarily surrender or enter into a program on my own. And that was sort of the plan all along, that I was going to get caught. And the last years of gambling, I knew that there was going to be an audit in my law firm's account, and they would discover the things that I did in order to feed my gambling addiction. So I had it in my own mind that when that day came, it wasn't a question of if, because all of the firms are audited randomly, that when that day came, I was probably going to either flee the country or end my life. So I kind of had an exit plan. And in a strange way, that gave me some peace, because I was looking for a conclusion, but that was the only one that I could think of, because I thought that I couldn't endure the pain of having to tell my wife and my children and everybody else in my life that they didn't even know who the real Jeff was at the time. They didn't know the things that I was capable of doing and that I did. And that whole idea was just so abhorrent to me that it was just easier for me at that time, with that mindset, to end it. But obviously, somebody else had a different idea that I'm glad I followed. And I went home and started to disclose who I was to my wife, my kids, my law partner, etc. So, yeah, it was quite an event. And I spent my first week of recovery in a psychiatric hospital. And then I started to go to GA. And I think it was at that, probably the very first meeting, because my local GA meeting really tries to integrate step one if there's somebody there for the first time, because it's so important to talk about, being powerless and having your life unmanageable. And I remember hearing it for the first time, I was convinced I was powerless. I didn't have to go through a process. Now everything was out in the open, and I could actually address the real core of my issue. And, looking at what I did for years and years and years, and what my life had become, I couldn't debate even internally whether I had any power over gambling or my life was somehow, manageable, because it wasn't. So
funny how, not funny, but it's just interesting how people keep track of their dates. Cause I remember when I went to my second GA meeting, they, said, well, your date is the day of your first meeting. I said, oh, okay. So that date was 1/16/09. I remember that date. That was my second meeting ever. My first meeting ever was a year and a half before that. I went to a meeting. It did not sit well with me. And I tried to just stop on my own at that point. Thought I can do this, not a problem. Then, of course, I went back to gambling. But I had told my parents in that time that I had gambled away all this money and I've been gambling for years and I have an addiction. And that's why, I got booted out of college and all this stuff. And then when I was going on my way to my second meeting, a year and a half later after my first meeting, I called my mom and I was like, hey, just to let you know, I'm going to a meeting. Isn't that great? And she said, haven't you been going to meetings for quite a long time? So that was something I'd forgotten about, and in ignoring my abstinence from gambling, of that I had lied and said that I was going to meetings. But I remember the last night before that second meeting that I went to of gambling, and I had never, ever felt physically ill before while gambling. And that night I felt physically ill from gambling. I had, I think, $200. I don't remember the rest of the night, but I remember the end of it. And I was just shoving money into a machine to get rid of it, just pressing the button to get rid of it. I didn't want to win. I was just pressing the button until the money was gone. I didn't care. I just wanted it gone out of my hands, because I realized that if I had money in my hands, I was going to try to gamble it. If I had access to money, I was going to try to gamble it. And that started when I was 18 and a freshman in college, and I had access, I was working 2 jobs and going to college. So I had plenty of access to money, plenty of money coming in to go gamble with. What I didn't have was time to gamble, work, and go to class. And so go to class was the thing that got canceled, and I didn't go to class, and I got kicked out of college, academically dismissed. And then, working 2 jobs became normal, because that's what I had to do, because I wasn't going to college. So I needed to do something. And so in working 2 jobs, I kept trying to, it's a cycle of, well, if I win enough money, then I won't have to work 2 jobs. But now I'm working 2 jobs. So I'm going to keep gambling to try to get out of the 2 jobs, but I have to work the 2 jobs because I'm gambling so much. And it just became this cycle. And then you throw in there, I don't have enough money, so I'm going to get some payday loans. And that cycle started, and it just spiraled out of control until I was lying to people about how much money I needed and why I needed it. Everybody, just common lies, just simple lies of, oh, I'm $100 short on my car payment. Can I borrow $100 from my sister? She'd be like, yeah, here, not thinking anything of it. And generally, $100 wasn't going to save me, but I could gamble $100 and maybe that would get me out of it. Or it was strange. It was a weird feeling of, if I didn't have enough money to pay the bill, then I should gamble the money, because then I'll get, it was sort of a last stand. What else am I going to do? And that went on for years. And I was somebody who knew early that I was addicted. When I was 18, I called the helpline number in Michigan about 3 months in. I knew, because I was just occupying all my time in my thought process. And I was getting worried about how much money I was losing. And I remember I used to track my money. I used to keep track and be like, I lost about this much last year. And that went on for a few years of where I was really tracking it. Then I forgot whatever that was, stopped tracking it, because that's depressing. And got into GA, and it was great. First meeting, it is weird to walk into, but a welcoming group is a welcoming group, and they were a welcoming group. So I liked that second meeting that I went to much better, and I went back for another 2.5 years until I got complacent, and then relapsed, and then went back and got complacent and relapsed. And so complacency did not do me well, but the rooms were good to me. Going to meetings worked really well for me. My date now is the date of my last bet. And that's because I didn't go back to another meeting for a very long time. I stayed out of meetings because I'd been to them. I'd been to therapy, and I just wanted to try something different. So that's why I used the date of my last bet as my date now, which was July 23rd of 2014. But yeah, that's scary walking into the room. It's scary to stop. It's because it's what it's what makes you comfortable is gambling. And to stop that is like, what am I going to do then about all this debt and all this worry? And I need to gamble my way out of it, but that never works. It never worked for me. Even if I had won, I put the money right back in that night. I would do that thing where I'd go in the bathroom and put half the money in my pocket and put the other half into a machine. And it was just a stupid cycle that I'm very happy to be out of 7 years and counting. So thank you.
So I've been hanging around, I guess you call it the rooms of a 12-step program of one form or another for, I just realized, 33 years. I started when I was 18, just looking for help with some of my compulsive behaviors. And I can remember, I don't know if it's okay to say, but like old timers, do we say that? Like those sponsors that are just, here's how it's going to be. I think we've all had that sponsor along the way at some point. And I can remember them saying that there's only one step that you have to do perfectly. And that's step one. You've got to nail it. And good grief, here I am 33 years later. And I don't know that I have. I think if it's a two-part step of, there's the powerless part and the unmanageable step. And I'm real clear on the unmanageable. I mean, it was just a shoot show, and we can all compare notes on the chaos that surrounded us with our gambling and the depths that we went to. And yet that sometimes wasn't even our bottom. And I'm fearful for the folks that follow us just on how bad that's going to be able to get when it's so much more accessible, and we're doing it in our homes and on our phones and stuff now, just how deep it's going to go into unmanageability and how accessible like credit and money and things were. So I have that list. Like that's kind of one way to work that step, is to just be like, what'd you do? Was that your plan? Did you blow past your set of time and a budget? You know, I tried to follow the poster. That didn't work out for me. And right over the edge of that. And things got really bleak. And I cannot remember feeling that the suffering was so profound that I actually surrendered. Clearly, that must have happened, and probably happened many times and continues to. I think I can feel it somewhere in my body, that just sadness of, this is so fun and I really love gambling and I feel good when I'm doing it, but I hate the consequences, and they're stacking up, and it's not working anymore. So I imagine that happened. I'm real into more of a try to change my thoughts kind of thing. And I think for much of my recovery, I focused more on what do I have the power to control? What can I do? And I'm going to keep that focus, knowing that at some point I did kind of say, I give up. I'm going to do what's suggested to me. So, you know what I was going to tell y'all? You asked us to wear our ugly sweaters, and I have my ugly t-shirt here that says, oh my gosh, Santa. But I'm thinking of that scene from this movie where he goes, Santa, I know him. And that's actually the experience I'm having here. Like, Jeff Wasserman, Brian Hatch, is that Steve the truck driver that's the fantasy sports podcaster now? And Rita, I've heard I've heard all of you on podcasts. I feel this sort of out-of-body experience actually sitting in a Zoom meeting with you. But you all have been my power in this latest stretch since we came inside and started having meetings on Zoom and doing, y'all have been doing podcasts for a long time. I just feel that I can hear you making suggestions or talking about what your experience has been. And that has very much empowered me to make those choices, to do those things. So I guess in as much as I'm saying, yeah, I was powerless, I'm really finding a lot of good choices I can make to stay empowered. And I'm getting that from other people. Like we're finding new ways to do this, aren't we? To give each other motivation and encouragement. And I'm so glad that that's available, because I don't love sitting in church basements on Friday nights. That's just not really been my jam. I was willing to. I've done it for a lot of years, but I like doing this. So thanks for having me. I think I'm the last one for this part of the question.
Yeah, thank you, Kitty. That was great. All of you, those were all wonderful, wonderful responses to the first step. And I think it's really important that we all find our way. And you're right. Step one is absolutely the one we've got to master, the one we've got to understand the most. So let's kind of keep with the holiday theme a little bit, since we all have kind of our festive looks and stuff like that. Can we talk about some advice, or I don't know if I know we don't talk about advice in the communities, but words of wisdom or things that you could share with somebody who might be struggling through the holiday season. I've struggled myself with urges, and I think a lot of it has been because of association with the holidays and gambling. Like, I gambled for a lot of years. I had, a lot of time off, and family always wanted to go to the big fancy casinos when they came into town. So there's a lot of holiday association with gambling. And so I have been struggling, but I have been reaching out. I've been working my steps, been working my program, working my way through it. I feel good today. But if we could kind of go around and share any kind of, tidbits or experience or hope or whatever you got. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to reverse it. I'm going to go back to Kitty.
Thanks, Christina. Okay, well, let's see. Expectations. That's kind of a big part of holidays. I don't know about y'all's childhood. Mine was complicated, and there was a lot of buildup to Christmas, and it was quite a dopamine high, that full day of receiving gifts and reward center activation. And I don't know that ups and downs kind of flow is ideal for me. I seem to probably do better with routine. And so I try to take the holidays as not that big of a whoop, really. I have trained my friends and family to expect gifts from me at really random times, and not particularly the holidays or their birthdays, just because I saw something and thought of them. I try to find those quiet moments around the holidays. Like, I grew up in Colorado, and it was a good day to go skiing on Christmas Day. One day where my gambling got really bad was in Australia. I immigrated to Australia, and we left on the 24th of December and got there on the 26th. And my husband and I always kind of reminisce that was kind of like the best Christmas ever, because it just didn't even exist. Like it just went into the space or something. That there wasn't that expectation of having to deliver. And I realize that's not practical for everyone, that you may choose to have kids and they have the wonder and excitement, but I just try to make the fun of it be more low key. I think we're probably going to go to a movie that's premiering, and we haven't been to a theater in a while, and that sounds kind of fun. Or maybe eat something. Steve, I heard you say that like you'll have a pizza on Friday as kind of treat day. Like maybe look forward to something a little more special to eat that's outside of my routine of things. I really want it to be about the richness of my relationships. And that includes my recovery relationships, of people that I can be uber vulnerable with and have kind of difficult talks and feel safe disclosing to. Not necessarily my family of origin. Some of them are included in that. I also want to have like my life be about not just taking away the gambling, but replacing it with other things, other hobbies. And there's a lot of suffering out there. There's plenty of people that are really hurting through the holidays. I live in a high-rise building in Portland that folks are going to be alone. So I try to figure out what that is and quietly do something to, just be around for them.
The holidays for me with gambling, Christina, I can kind of relate to that. Sorry, I shouldn't be looking at my computer. I can relate to that being a a time that's difficult. I mentioned that my relationship with gambling was on again, off again, but I have this very crystal clear memory of the first Christmas after my mom passed away. So 2001, we tried to have some kind of a normal Christmas in my household without mom there. And my grandma was there, and she was drunk on sherry, and my son was there, and my dad was there, and my sister was there. It was pretty small gathering. And after we were done with the traditions, the meal and the opening of gifts, I could not wait to get out of there. And I put my son to bed. I mean, the plan was we're going to stay the night and Santa was going to come and visit. So that on Christmas Day, Santa had been to fill the stockings, and I left. I left my grandma, my sister, my dad, and I went and I binged until about 7 a.m. the next day. No sleep, celebrated that Christmas strung out on Coca-Cola and probably a different version of the word Coke and a gambling high. And it's one of my biggest regrets when I think about my gambling experience, that I was in so much pain that I didn't know how to deal with. And I was so selfish about my own pain that I wasn't there for my family who was suffering just as much as I was. So this time of year is, that's when these memories come flooding back too. So it can be a really difficult time, and I've since lost all, but not all. I've gained so much too, but my stepfather and my grandma have both passed away as well. So it's just a difficult time for me to get through this season. And I need conversation like this in order to be able to do that.
So I was primarily, all I did was play daily fantasy sports. I played it off and on for several years. For me, the holidays, I wouldn't say it got worse or any easier, but of course, that time of year, you're spending a lot of money. You're always looking at the amount of money you lost, what you could have done more for your family or whatever. But one memory I can think back on is really last year when things were at its worst. I still wasn't working a lot of hours at work, didn't know what was going on with the pandemic and whatnot. I just was really worried about money. I never took money from our bank accounts. I never took money from our savings. Everything I took was from our 401k. I would take money from our 401k and, win some, lose some, go back and forth. But I just remember that Christmas being not fully present, just being stressed out about money. And on DraftKings, they play basketball on Christmas Day. And that was the big thing I played was basketball. So the games start at noon. So there's like a noon, a 2, a 5, I think it's 8 and 10. And this was, I would play a lot of different slates. Typically, like anyone who knows daily fantasy sports, basketball, the main slate starts at 7 p.m. most of the time. And every once in a while, I'd play the 7, sometimes the 8 slots, sometimes the night games. But with Christmas, you can set 12 o'clock as the main slate, but you can enter 2 o'clock, you can enter 5 o'clock. So I basically had entered as the day was going on every single one of those slates. I have no idea the money amount, but I did a bunch of entries for the 12 o'clock slate. I did a bunch of entries for the 2 o'clock, the 5 o'clock, the 8 o'clock, the 10 o'clock, and just some were winning, some were losing, the up and down emotions, the spikes of the wins, the lows of the losses. And this is what I'm worrying about on Christmas, as I have my children opening and playing with their toys. I'm with my wife. We've made Christmas like our day, where it's just like my wife, Kelly, who was one of your earlier episodes, and my kids, because, we have family that live on Long Island still, and we have family that lives up here. So instead of having to run back and forth like we used to go, we'd spend time with my family, then we'd run to my wife's family. And we never really spent a lot of time with the kids at home with their stuff. So we decided that this is what we were going to do on Christmas Day, is we're just going to spend the day as a family together. And I just remember last year, I was there in the morning. We, of course, I didn't go anywhere. I played specifically on my phone. So I was there, but I wasn't there, and I don't regret anything I've done. I've taken a lot of these things as learning experiences on how I can do things better the next time. And a lot of it's been going through therapy and doing these meetings. Is I know I'm not a bad person. I didn't do these things out of malice. I didn't do these things because I didn't care about my family. I was deep in an addiction. So, my suggestion would be, I can only make suggestions for what I did. Daily fantasy. I only played on my phone. So, this is basically a daily thing now, but when I am home, I leave my phone on a counter. I don't bring my phone in the bathroom with me anymore. I don't bring my phone anywhere. I basically just once I get home, I put my phone down and that's it. I don't go back. I don't look at emails. I don't look at really anything. So for me on Christmas, I'm not going to touch my phone. I would say if you're a daily fantasy sports gambler or an online gambler, leave your phone in the bedroom, leave your phone plugged in. Or if your family knows about it, give them your phone or tell them to be cognizant of the fact that, of where your phone is at all times, if it's something you're struggling with. For me, that's the big thing. Don't touch your phone. I'm as open as possible about it. It took me a while to open up a lot about my gambling and my other addictions. It took me most of my relationship with my wife to even open up about the fact that I had heroin addictions in the past. And then when I got caught gambling, when my wife caught me, it was really just her and I that knew about it. Then slowly I started telling other people about it. I came into meetings. I went on to Brian and Jeff's podcast. And then slowly now I'm comfortable enough to tell everyone. A lot of people are not fully comfortable opening up about their addictions. For me, I think it's just because I've had drug addictions in the past and I've had my gambling addictions. Now I'm comfortable being open about it. So for me, the two things is being as open as possible. That's why I started my podcast. I try to put out as much as I can on this. I know how much podcasts have helped me, and I want to help others, basically. So, just be as open as you can. I know everybody has different situations. It may not be easy to be open with the people in your family, but I've basically told everybody in my life, and I don't touch my phone anymore. So that's what I do for me.
Yeah, for me, I think the biggest thing is just setting boundaries with family members and stuff, because we can get really stressed in the holidays, and that was a trigger for me. Is stress with family, stress with kind of like Steve said, the running around and shuffling back and forth to like the in-laws and all that. But also, I think for me too, it's about understanding it's okay to say no to everything that, not no to everything, but, you don't have to say yes to everything. You don't have to go to every little function. You don't have to go to just really wear yourself thin to try and create all these memories and stuff. And then you deplete yourself, and then you start looking for ways to, I don't know. I think that was the biggest thing for me, is depleting myself to the point where I needed that escape. And so, for me, it's about setting boundaries and about being okay with saying no and not doing everything that's in front of me.
I've been sitting here listening and thinking back. I lost my mom and had to spend my first Christmas without her in 2001 as well. And I was up in Massachusetts with my husband and a family friend. And I didn't know anywhere to go in Massachusetts. The places I knew to go were other locations. But for the holidays, my biggest thing is connection. Always connection. Being connected with others. And sometimes maybe that's not as easy in a family situation, but find someone with whom you can be connected. It's outside of the gambling world. It could be a third cousin once removed, or it could be a sister or a brother. I'm an only child, so I don't have that experience. So I got cousins, though, that I'm very, very close to, like brother and sister. But connection, to me, is the most important thing that there is. And when we go off in our little islands of gambling, we're not connected. We're not connected. Thank you, Kitty. We're not connected when we're off by ourselves. So find a connection. And I'm going to pass it to Kitty.
Thanks, Rita. I was just sneaking a little chat to her, and I said, "I'm your sister now," because I mean, where else are we going to find a connection to talk to people about what we've been through with this just weird thing we ended up dealing with, right? Than in other folks that had the gambling going on.
First, I have to make a little bit of a public service announcement that remember, for those listening, that lottery tickets and scratch-offs are not good stocking stuffers for children. You wouldn't give your kids a pack of cigarettes or a shot of whiskey for Christmas, so don't give them stuff to gamble with. Okay, so my perspective on Christmas, when I think of it, is a little bit different, since my wife and I are Jewish and we celebrate Hanukkah, and my wife was a pharmacist when she was working and worked at a hospital and always volunteered to work Christmas Day. And that's why my memories for many years of Christmas was elation, because my wife was working and Atlantic City was not crowded. And I would spend the day gambling. And most of the time, Christmas Day ended up horribly wrong. But that's my memories of it. I will say that I have a little bit of a different take as to what Christmas can maybe be used for. For people that are listening and maybe struggling and have not yet decided to enter recovery or come out, as they say, think about when spending Christmas with your family, think about how much love they give you and support they give you. And know that if you tell them about your issue, they will support you and love you, and that's what you need. And any shame that you may be feeling about it, I understand. I mean, we all go through it. That's part of the process. But having the support and love of your family and the understanding, and not only that, but for some to be able to use some of your family members as support people, whether it's to monitor your finances or just keep you in check, it's incredibly helpful. So when you're sitting down to dinner, and hopefully you are with the family that is loving and compassionate and caring, think about how they would be if you shared with them the challenge that you have, and I'm sure you'll conclude that they will support you and love you. And that's, for me, that was the most amazing help in recovery.
Holidays were triggering for me back then because generally would get paid right before the holiday. Worked in manufacturing, so sometimes we would get a bonus. And so then there's extra money in there. And then in those 18, 19, 20, 21-year-old years, I was still getting relative as gifts cash, a check or something in the mail. And so it was always money. And then I'm off work for generally a couple of days, somewhere in there with the holiday. And it was like, oh, okay, now I've got time. And so I look forward to it all the time during the holiday to go gamble. I hated gambling in the evenings because that's when all the regular people went who would gamble. They would go at 8:00 at night for their entertainment. And I didn't want to be around those people because I felt dirty as hell gambling on what I was gambling on at the casinos at that time. So the holiday, I could go a little earlier in the day before they got there. And that always made me excited to go. So holiday gambling was a big part of my gambling. And I'm glad I don't have to deal with any of that stress and crap anymore. But the one thing about time that I learned was when I stopped gambling, I had to be okay with letting time go and just who gives a shit about what's happening in life. I need to concentrate on not gambling. And so when I stopped finally, what I did was I stayed in my room and I just watched movies, and I had to be okay with missing out on everything that was happening outside and in life. I just stayed inside because I was worried that if I got in my car, I was going to drive to the casino. And so I would go to work, I would come home, and I would just watch a movie and then another movie and then another TV show. And I was just okay with staying inside and eating cake and watching TV and basically just being lazy and enjoying it because everything else was detrimental. The gambling was detrimental. And so I had to just be okay with like, you know what? I'm going to just take a break from life for a while and people and just sit here and not gamble. And that's what I need to concentrate on. And it feels kind of wasteful, but it worked. I mean, I didn't gamble again. I haven't gambled since. And it was that time because I had to separate myself from those urges, those immediate urges that happened. And sitting inside separated me from those urges. And so I would definitely try that. The other thing I noticed too is when people relapse, it's generally, well, I knew I should have called, but I didn't. And I was like that all the time because I was like, if I call, I'm not going to be able to gamble. And so that's where the personal responsibility comes in is people want to help you, but you got to let them know that you need help. You got to give them a little helping hand that you need help, because if you don't, you're right back to where you started and you're no better off than you were and probably worse off. So just use the people that that want to help you. And if you don't have people, find some people. There are plenty of people out there who want to help you. There's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of them right here. So find a room. There's plenty of rooms, plenty of different avenues of recovery. We usually list them during this. I'm sure we'll list them during this meeting. So reach out, get yourself some help if you don't want to gamble. My last question to everybody, unless Christina has another one. My last question to everybody to wrap up the meeting is, how is your life better without gambling? And I don't mean just my head is clear and I see stars now at night and I love the sunshine, but detail wise, and I'll give you an example of what I mean. I don't worry about paying bills anymore. It's not my worry, whereas it was a constant worry before. You might not be making as much money, but you're not bleeding out the money. And so there's money there. And that's the best thing about stopping gambling, is you stop the bleeding. The other thing is I don't smoke anymore. Smoking was a big part of gambling for me. And without gambling, smoking kind of went away eventually. Wasn't as great. I sleep better because with gambling, I would stay up all night at the casino and then go to work and not sleep and then sleep after work and then wake up in the middle of the night. And it was all just jacked up. My lifestyle was dirty and jacked up. And I wasn't taking care of myself, and I was gross all the time because I wasn't showering because I was out gambling and smelling like smoke all the time. And so without gambling, my life is just better. It's just better. That money that you were looking for, all of a sudden you have, The other thing that I didn't mention last time is before I decided like, I don't want to gamble. What should I do? Well, if I have money, that's a trigger for me. I went out and bought a TV. I'm not saying go out and buy a TV, but at least you have a TV at the end of the night instead of nothing. So with that, my life is much better without gambling. It just is mounds better. And with that, I will pass to Tara. I don't know why I said it like a question mark. I'm the one making the choice there.
I think it's so hard to describe. And we had this conversation a couple weeks ago with some women in a women's only room, just how much different my life is without gambling. But yeah, I see the stars and the moon and the sun, Brian. So I'm not going to not mention that because those are things I didn't pick my head up and look at. You know, I was just in a zombie zone, like go to work, do the checklist of the things my life required of me and figure out a way to go place a bet and obsessively thinking about that, not looking up, and realizing all that was great around me every single day. So today I appreciate a lot more of my life than I ever used to, even the hard days, which is, that's new. You know, the hard days used to make me want to run away. I didn't know how to deal with the way that I felt, but I have begun to listen to myself and begun to pay attention to my hopes, my wants, my desires, my dreams, and stop telling myself that I wasn't good enough to have any of it and stop telling myself that I should throw away everything that I earned because I didn't deserve it and start telling myself that I'm here to live and I'm here to have a full life. And I kind of quit a version of my life that didn't feel like it was right for me anymore. And I started to, you know, go down this track of entrepreneurial spirit and embrace my risk taking. I mean, let's face it, addicts tend to be risk takers, but embrace that in a way that was positive and can contribute something new to the world. My relationship with my son is so much better. I've continued my self-improvement journey. I quit drinking. I quit going to the bars all the time. That's just within the past year, really continuing to look at, is this the life that I want to live? And that's a question that I never asked myself. I was just living on autopilot. So I would say the biggest way that my life has improved since I stopped gambling is I've gotten to know myself so much better, the people around me, and to begin to listen to what I believe is my intended purpose in life, which is to help other people. And that's a voice that I was silencing inside of myself for a really, really long time. So I will continue to accept my messy, but also recognize that on the other side of that, there's something pretty beautiful. And yeah, that's what gambling free life looks like for me today.
Oh, thanks, Tara. And I think I may have been in that women's meeting, and there was some of us, well, I mean, not to share what happens in a meeting, but there's this kind of realization once the gambling isn't just right here all the time, you get a little more space from it, or just the my other addiction, certainly alcohol. I'm so delighted to not be thinking about drinking all the time through the holidays. It used to be pretty distracting and took a lot of my energy to just manage that of the urges and triggers. But it sounded like one of the things that many of us admitted we're going through now that the beast is somewhat caged for a bit, that we have a reprieve, is that now we can start some really hard work. And I can't remember, Brian, if the question is what's good in your life or just how is it different? Everything both of you said, yay, like good things are happening and the bills are pretty paid and all is well. Also have the opportunity to now start doing that inventory work and going, what is meaningful in my life and how do I align my time and my behavior with what my values are and find balance in so many areas that lacked balance. And it's been kind of scary and with some fits and starts and some sad times to do it in the midst of this pandemic and working in the nonprofit sector where who knows what's going to happen next fiscal year is terrifying sometimes. So I guess I can say that I've really been brave and I haven't done things with perfect grace or that I just feel like I've shown up for myself and I've tried to show up for other people to say like I'm uncomfortable and I'm doing the work, and if you want to do it with me, maybe we can be uncomfortable together. And that is just kind of a daily kind of battle that you have to put on your holster and make sure all your arsenal is sharpened and properly cared for, and that you have the right tools in the belt to go out and do what you're doing. And it's a grind. Like you every day, you don't really get a break from having to do the self-reflection, even in the days where you tuck in a little more. That those rest days are also hard work to be looking at what's going on in here. So I'm trying to welcome that. It's not comfortable, and I think we're kind of wired to be comfortable. So I'm going to keep doing it.
How is my life different? I guess I've had a longer time to have a different life. And before, when I was in active addiction, my relationship with money was this. If I have, I spend. If I don't have, I don't spend as much. And that was my philosophy. It's a lot different now. Gambling isn't just about the money. Don't get me wrong there. It's not just about the money, but my relationship with money has changed. I have money saved up, which I didn't have before. I depleted my 401k and a whole bunch of other things while I was gambling. I borrowed from my credit cards and ran up debt. Now I still have to pay. I don't have to, but I choose to pay the debts that I ran up. And I will be doing that for a while. That's one of the things that's different, but it's a better different because I can plan, I can have things. I don't have to worry about paying this or robbing Peter to pay Paul type things. And that's just one thing. Then there's, I believe, well, I can sleep. I can sleep peacefully. When I used to gamble, I would hear, when I left, I would still hear all the noise from the gambling. My eyes deceive me here. Stop it, Jeff. I can sleep now. As I was saying, when I would come back, I could hear all the noise, smell the smoke in my clothes and was in my hair, and I couldn't sleep with all of that. Now I don't have to worry about smelling like a smokestack. I don't smoke anymore myself. And then there's just the joy of everyday things that I get to have because I can pay attention to that and not have my mind filled with, okay, I used to think if I saw a certain number sequence, that was a sign. You know, I can look at a clock now and it's just 3:17 in the afternoon. It's not a sign for me to go off, or it's 4:44 in the afternoon, or it could be in the morning, depending on when I decide I'm waking up for the day. And so I can look at a watch or a clock and not be triggered to go gamble. Those are just some of the things that I can enjoy the time during the day. Because as I said, my mind isn't filled up with, oh, I'm going to go to the casino, I'm going to do this, I'm going to play this machine. I was a slot player mostly. It was funny how that worked, but it's not funny. But these are some of the things that are better for me now. It's a whole bunch. I could talk from now till Christmas, but I won't.
I'll just mention the two most important things I think that have changed for the better in my life since entering recovery. I think the first thing has to be that I am now the person that you think you know, as opposed to somebody that is a stranger. And especially to the people that are closest to me and, you know, care about me, they now know the real me. Before, they knew their perception, their image, their who they thought I was and who I tried to portray myself and was pretty successful at it, but it wasn't me. So it feels just good to, you know, to be responded to, whether it's positively or negatively. At least it's to the person who I am. The second thing is just the absence of stress of getting caught. That was so stressful. I mean, whether it was getting caught by my wife that I was gambling or anyone else, you know, that, you know, I was just so focused on avoiding getting caught. And again, it was stressful to make sure that you've crossed every T and dotted every I and remembered every lie. Because if you had one that was sort of out of balance, that could make people question what's going on here. And that was not something that I wanted to, you know, even think about. So that stress, of course, the stress in terms of, you know, some of the behaviors that I engaged in while gambling, and the stress of knowing that, or thinking at the time that there was going to be a day where I wasn't going to see my family anymore. And as much as I came to that decision, as I mentioned earlier, it still made me sad, you know, and I always walked around with sadness, even at the happiest occasions. So I remember being at my son's wedding, and it was such a happy time. But I wasn't completely happy. I was always that cloud, that dark cloud hanging over me. And the more happy and more wonderful an event was, and you see your family and extended family, and they all, you know, are happy to see you, it was just a further reminder that they don't know what I was, who I was, what I was doing. And you know, there's obviously some sadness related to that. So I am happy not to deal with those two issues anymore. And like Rita, I could, you know, give you a list, but I don't want to be here till Christmas Eve.
Rita raised her hand, Jeff. Can you call on Rita?
Rita?
Rita has her hand
hi.
raised.
Rita, your hand is raised. Yes?
Yes, it's raised. I just remembered one of the best things that from that happens now. I get to support other people, be in service to other people who are on the road to recovery. And that is, I can't express the gratitude I have or the joy I have. I'm getting ready to get teary-eyed here, but it's just such a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
And here I am in recovery, helping other people in recovery. And that's just phenomenal for me.
I could not agree with you more. It's funny. That doesn't come to mind only because, and I think this is what you said, Rita, only because I view it as something that I get value out of, that it helps me most in my recovery. So I don't look at it as any kind of, sacrifice on my part, or even, going effort on my part. To me, I'm the one that benefits the most. And that's why I think of it in those terms, which I think all of us who have done service like that can relate. It really makes you feel good.
And I agree. Yeah, one of the greatest things about this, life after gambling is being able to help others, for sure. Once you get to a point where you're comfortable with yourself, I find that to be one of the most, gratifying things to do. Whether it's just a phone call or whether it's, there's a million ways we can help one another. Anyway, so some of the great things that have come out of my recovery, or, since I stopped gambling is, like Jeff said, the stress of not having to worry about day to day about being caught. But, like I've said a few times, I didn't tell my wife the full story of who I was and what this opportunity came, being caught, my wife finally realizing that I had this gambling addiction. It made it so I just finally could pour everything out. I didn't hold anything in anymore. I didn't try to, put this mask on that I had these other, I told her I had like a problem with pills or whatever in the past. I was able to finally just say, this is who I am. And the fact that she still loves me after that and still wants to stay married to me, that's been one of the most beneficial things for me is, seeing my wife and I's relationship progress even through our different recovery. She's part of Gam-Anon. I'm in GA. I'm in our groups. And we have gotten closer as a couple because of this. It's not easy and not every day is perfect. It's not going to be perfect, but that's what one of the biggest things I've learned in recovery is, getting through those days, where every day is not going to be a good day. And we have to learn how to get through the difficult days, whether it's me having a difficult day or her having a difficult day. So my wife and I's relationship has grown. I actually love who I am today. I could never fully accept who I was. I never even wanted to admit I was an addict, even though I had years of multiple addictions. I can accept who I am today. That's one great thing I've gotten out of this is, that acceptance of being a compulsive gambler, a recovering addict. And there's nothing wrong with that. The day-to-day great things, like for example, today, on Sundays, my son and I, we go to the gym together now. I'm really back into my health and fitness. I'm really back into playing my music all the time now. But, like my son and I, he's 7. We went to the gym today, and once again, we went higher on our weights today, and it felt great. He's jumping up, like high-fiving. It's just, we get that bonding time, and I don't have to worry about what my fantasy lineups are doing. I don't have to worry about what money I lost this week, whatever, or one, it doesn't matter. I don't have to worry about any of this stuff anymore. I can be in the moment now. I can appreciate these moments that are not always going to be here. My sons are 7 and 4. And anyone who's got kids knows that like not every day is easy with them, but you have to, at least for me now, I can like take a breath, take a step back and just enjoy these moments, instead of rushing them off to bed or wanting to rush through each moment, or, that's another thing. I don't rush through my days anymore. I typically work 12, 14-hour days. I go to work at 5 o'clock in the morning. I sometimes don't get home till 8, 9 o'clock at night. I'd want to rush through my day, get home, everything was rushed. Just get through this, get through that. Now I can sit down or whatever I'm doing. Even if I'm at work having a difficult day, I can take a step back and just enjoy life. Like, we only get so much of this time here. And I'm tired of, I refuse to waste any more time in negativity and negative self-talk and emotions. I like to focus on the positive aspects of life, regardless of what's going on around me. And this has all pushed me back into my positive mindsets, my positive actions, behaviors, whatever you want to call it, playing my music, working out with myself or with my kids, and having a great relationship with my wife and the people around me. And that's what I've gotten out of this.
Yeah, I think for me, the biggest thing, still pretty early in recovery, but the biggest thing that I've gained, like I got my bonus check last week, and normally, like, I don't know how many years I put that back into the casino, and literally, like, there was no point in having a bonus check because it would just be gone. And so, being able to utilize that, and it was actually a little more than I thought. And so I had these contemplations of like, oh, there's money unaccounted for, and this is one of the struggles that I had, and I just am being honest about it. And I was able to use the tools that I've gained since I've stopped. I reached out to people, talking about the struggle. I was honest with my husband about the amount of money. So he knew to watch for that. And, I just kind of pampered myself a little bit, but that's just one of the many, many things that have changed in my recovery since I started recovery. But yeah, being able to sit on the couch next to my spouse and not have all these things going through my head. Like, what if he finds out about this? What if he finds out about that? What if he tries to use the debit card and there's not enough money in there, for whatever he's doing, those kinds of things, because I did take from our personal account, and, I was somebody that was not honest, why I was gambling. So not having those types of stressors. And then the biggest one for me is not having the broke girl society. If I hadn't stepped into recovery and just found other people to connect with and to talk to you about this, that connection just means the world to me, to be able to talk with all these people who know exactly what I've experienced, what I've gone through, and can listen and be there, and I can be there for them. So those are all I'm just like everybody else. I could talk about this all week, but we've been here for a while. So I'm just going to shoot it back over to Brian.
Thank you so much for joining us for this sort of live meeting. Really happy that everybody got to experience a meeting if you've never experienced one. But most of all, I'm thankful to Rita and to Jeff and to Tara and to Stevie D and to Kitty and, of course, Christina. Thank you all so much for joining us and putting your faces out there and your words out there and your messages of hope out there for everybody who may come across this video. And thanks, everybody, for watching The Bet Free Life. I'm Brian for Christina. Good night.
Hey, welcome to the Bet. Shit.